When Take Me Home, Country Roads first hit the airwaves, it introduced music fans to the unforgettable talent of John Denver. Over the next 2 decades, Denver would rise to become one of the most beloved acoustic artists of the 1970s and one of the best-selling performers of his time. But John Denver was more than just a soothing voice and a chart-topping musician. He was a cultural icon and a role model to many. However, behind the scenes, Denver's personal life told a very different story. Away from the spotlight, the man admired by millions lived a life filled with emotional struggles and hidden controversies. From the candid revelations of former wives to legal run-ins that shocked fans, the reality behind Denver's wholesome image was far more complex and troubling than most ever imagined. After years of speculation and rumor, the truth about the man behind the music has finally come to light. And it's more surprising than many ever expected. John Denver was born Henry John Deutschendorf, Jr. on December 31st, 1943. He grew up in Roswell, New Mexico, surrounded by a family with a deep love for aviation. His father, Captain Henry Deutschendorf Sr., was a decorated Air Force pilot who set 3-speed records in the legendary B-58 Hustler bomber. He was a celebrated military figure, even earning a place in the Air Force Hall of Fame. But life in a military family meant constant relocation. The Deutschendorfs moved frequently: Arizona, Alabama, Texas, all within a few years. This transience made it nearly impossible for young John to form lasting friendships. Just as he would begin to settle in, it was time to move again. This left him with a persistent sense of loneliness and a feeling of not truly belonging in an emotional thread that would follow him throughout his life. When John was 11 years old and living in Tucson, Arizona, his grandmother gifted him a 1910 Gibson guitar, ready more than 40 years old by the time it reached his hands. That guitar became a symbol of comfort and stability during a turbulent childhood. It sparked a love for music that grew. Quickly, he joined the Tucson, Arizona Boys Chorus, where he learned to harmonize and perform in front of crowds. At high school, he was already singing folk songs at small gigs. Music became more than just a pastime, it became his anchor in a chaotic world. But Denver's journey wasn't without its challenges, especially at home. His father, known as Dutch, was strict and demanding, always pushing John to excel. Denver was a gentle spirit who simply wanted to write and play music. Their conflicting personalities often caused friction, though they did share one passion: flying. When John learned to fly, it gave them common ground, something that finally brought them closer. In a way, the sky became their shared refuge, a reminder of both freedom and the importance of family. That same love of flying, full of freedom and risk, would later play a tragic role in John Denver's life. For him, the skies symbolized liberation. It's a theme that echoed throughout his music. After high school, Denver enrolled at Texas Tech University, originally intending to study architecture. But it didn't take long for him to realize his true passion wasn't designing buildings, it was making music. He left school and moved to Los Angeles, determined to chase his dreams. Around this time, he made another important decision: to change his name. He chose Denver after the capital of Colorado, a state whose mountains and rivers he deeply loved. For him, it felt like a fresh beginning, both personally and artistically. In the mid-1960s, Denver got his first major break. Out of nearly 200 hopefuls, he was chosen to become the lead singer of the Chad Mitchell Trio, a well-known folk group. It was his first true entry into the professional music world, giving him the chance to tour across the country and perform before large crowds. He spent about 2 years with the group, recording 3 albums. Life on the road was tough, but it helped him grow both as a performer and as a person. During this time, Denver also wrote one of his most iconic songs, Leaving on a Jet Plane. Although Denver's own solo fame had yet to rise, the song found success through the folk trio Peter, Paul, and Mary, who recorded it in the late 1960s. By the end of the decade, it had climbed to #1 on the Billboard charts, proving that Denver had a gift for songwriting that deeply resonated with people. When the Chad Mitchell Trio eventually disbanded, Denver moved forward with confidence. Transitioning from group member to solo star wasn't easy, but he made it look effortless. His true breakout came in the early 1970s with the release of his album Poems, Prayers, and Promises. Among the tracks was a song that would change his life, Take Me Home, Country Roads. But that song's success was far from guaranteed. The initial recordings had technical issues, and for a time it looked like it might flop. But Denver's new manager, Jerry Weintraub, refused to let it fail. He convinced radio stations starting in Denver, Colorado, to give the song airplay. Released in mid-April, it slowly began to gain traction. By late August, it had soared to number 2. On the Billboard Hot 100, it sold over 1 million copies and went gold that same month. Over the years, the song remained a cultural touchstone, eventually selling more than 1.5 million digital copies in the U.S. alone. Its legacy became so enduring that West Virginia adopted it as one of their official state songs. In 1972, Denver followed up with the album Rocky Mountain High, released in September. It was his 6th studio album and the first to break into the top 10 on the Billboard 200, peaking at number 4. The title track, inspired by the natural beauty of Colorado, came another Denver classic, reaching the top 10 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1973. That same year, it landed at number 29 on the year-end chart and became a beloved anthem for fans who shared his appreciation for nature and the outdoors. The album's cover photo, taken at Slaughterhouse Falls in Aspen, made the project feel even more personal. Years later, Rocky Mountain High was named one of Colorado's 2 official state songs, cementing Denver's connection to the place that inspired so much of his music. The peak of Denver's commercial success came in 1974 and 1975. In just 18 months, he scored 4 number-1 hits on the Billboard Hot 100. Sunshine on My Shoulders reached the top spot in March 1974. Annie's Song, written for his then-wife, hit number 1 in July, Thank God I'm a Country Boy, topped the chart in May 1975, and I'm Sorry followed closely, reaching number 1 in September of that same year. This string of hits firmly established John Denver as one of the biggest musical acts of the 1970s, a true voice of a generation. Grounded in heartfelt lyrics, nature-inspired melodies, and an unmistakable authenticity. These songs showcase the many dimensions of John Denver's talent. Some, like Sunshine on My Shoulders, were soft, reflective, and full of hope. Others, such as Thank God I'm a Country Boy, were lively, joyful, and bursting with energy. And then there was Annie's Song, a deeply personal love letter to his wife, written in just 10 minutes, which quickly became a timeless favorite at weddings around the world. By this point, John Denver was everywhere on the radio, on television, and in millions of homes across the country. His popularity soared during what became the golden era of his career. Between 1973 and 1975, he released 3 blockbuster albums that all topped the charts. John Denver's Greatest Hits, 1973, became the best-selling album in RCA Records history, even surpassing Elvis Presley. Back Home Again, 1974, was certified triple platinum in the United States. Win Song 1975 followed closely, going double platinum. Together, these albums cemented Denver's status as a music superstar. Over the course of his career, he recorded around 300 songs, writing more than 200 of them himself. He earned 12 gold albums, 4 platinum albums, and sold over 33 million records worldwide, making him one of the most successful singer-songwriters of the 1970s. But Denver didn't stop at music. He made a bold and surprisingly successful leap into Hollywood. In 1977, he starred alongside comedy legend George Burns in the film Oh God, directed by Carl Reiner and based on a novel by Avery Corman. Denver, who had never acted professionally before, played a humble grocery store manager chosen by God to deliver a divine message to the world. His warm, sincere performance resonated with audiences, and the film became a major hit, earning over $51 million in the U.S. and receiving an Oscar nomination for Best Screenplay. Although Denver didn't return for the sequels, Oh God proved that he could do more than just sing. He became one of the rare musicians to successfully transition to acting, earning both critical and popular praise. While some skeptics doubted his ability to appeal beyond American audiences, Denver proved them wrong. His manager, Jerry Weintraub, believed strongly in bringing Denver's music directly to international fans. So, despite resistance from critics, Weintraub organized a series of television specials for British audiences. His approach was simple. If the critics wouldn't make Denver a star overseas, the people would. And they did. Denver's down-to-earth personality, paired with his clear, heartfelt vocals, quickly won over viewers in the UK and across Europe. The television specials were a huge success and helped make him a truly international star. One of these shows, An Evening with John Denver, even won a Primetime Emmy Award, to one of television's highest honors. He continued appearing in a series of specials where he performed songs, shared stories, and invited friends to join him. These broadcasts brought his music and message into homes around the globe. Each performance felt intimate, sincere, and uniquely personal, qualities that helped make John Denver one of the most beloved entertainers of his time. But Denver was more than just a performer. In the mid-1980s, he took a stand for something he deeply believed in: freedom of expression. As public pressure mounted for warning labels on music deemed offensive, Denver, known for his gentle, family-friendly songs, surprised many. By speaking out against censorship before the U.S. Senate, he reminded lawmakers that even his song, Rocky Mountain High, had once been wrongly censored, with people mistakenly assuming it was about drug use. In reality, the song celebrated the beauty of nature and the emotional highs it can bring. Denver used his voice to defend artistic freedom and the right of musicians to share their ideas, no matter how misunderstood. Many expected John Denver to support warning labels on music in the 1980s, but he didn't. His passionate defense of free speech surprised many and helped shift the national debate. His stand, especially as a wholesome artist, gave new weight to the conversation, and its impact is still felt today. That same year, Denver became the first American artist in over a decade to tour the Soviet Union during the height of the Cold War. He performed in 11 cities, including Moscow, Leningrad, and Tallinn, using music to build a bridge between two very different cultures. Even audiences who didn't understand English were deeply moved by the universal themes of peace, love, and unity in his songs. Inspired by the experience, he wrote, "Let Us Begin," a song pleading for peace over conflict. The live performances from that historic tour were later released as the album Live in the USSR. Denver returned to the Soviet Union again in the late 1980s. This time in the aftermath of the Chernobyl nuclear disaster. The catastrophe forced thousands from their homes and caused long-term health issues. Denver headlined a benefit concert in Moscow, raising both awareness and substantial funds for the victims. The night wasn't about politics. It was about compassion. His presence, guitar in hand, reminded many that a single voice can make a real difference. In the early 1990s, Denver took his music to China, a country still cautiously opening up to Western influences. Songs like Take Me Home, Country Roads were already being sung in Chinese schools. The government invited him to tour multiple cities, and one of his concerts was broadcast to over 2 billion viewers. It's an astonishing number. Though some hoped for performances at historic locations like the Forbidden City or the Temple of Heaven, it was the Chinese youth who embraced him most. Even high-ranking officials had long been aware of his music. His China tour made him one of the most popular Western musicians in the country at the time. As his music career slowed, Denver focused more on humanitarian work. In the 1990s, he released a greatest hits album called Homegrown, with all proceeds going to help the homeless. He co-founded the World Hunger Project, and for his efforts, he received the Presidential World Without Hunger Award. His environmental activism also deepened. Denver started the WinStar Foundation and launched Plant It 2000, a global reforestation campaign. He had once said that caring for the earth was just as important to him as making music, and he lived by that belief. Yet behind the scenes, Denver's personal life was unraveling. His first marriage to Annie Martel began as a storybook romance. They adopted 2 children, and he wrote Annie's song in her honor. But as his fame grew, their relationship began to fracture. Annie later revealed she felt invisible, often overshadowed by Denver's rising celebrity. Their early 1980s divorce was bitter. Though Denver was beloved publicly, reports painted a much darker private image. He was said to be angry and unpredictable. One particularly disturbing incident occurred after Annie cut down several of his beloved oak trees. In response, he arrived at their Aspen home with a chainsaw and sawed their furniture and even their bed in half. This shocking act became a symbol of their broken marriage, and witnesses were stunned. It was hard to reconcile that behavior with the soft-spoken singer they thought they knew. Denver had been the one to file for divorce, but court documents and testimony portrayed a pattern of abuse and volatility. Former managers and friends acknowledged he had a dark temper. Though Annie remained quiet after the divorce, the damage to Denver's image was done. Many fans saw him in a new, troubling light. Later, he met Australian actress and singer Cassandra Delaney in Sydney. Their whirlwind romance led to a mountain wedding in the late 1980s. At first, it seemed like a fresh start, but problems quickly emerged. Cassandra was much younger, and life with a famous, often moody man took a toll. Though they appeared happy in public, Cassandra later described the relationship as controlling and isolating their daughter. Jessie was born not long after, a moment Denver called a miracle, as he believed he couldn't have children due to a childhood illness. But even Jessie's birth couldn't stabilize the marriage. Cassandra spoke candidly in later interviews, describing Denver as a man who had no real friends, whose staff were terrified of him, and whose gentle public image masked a much harsher reality. She said he drank heavily, yelled frequently, and tried to control every aspect of her life. They separated in the early 1990s and divorced a few years later. The legal battle was brutal, with Denver suing for millions and accusing Cassandra of damaging his reputation. She fought for custody of Jessie. Denver later admitted in his book that the divorce had left him deeply wounded and changed him permanently. In the mid-1990s, he released his autobiography, Take Me Home, and it shocked longtime fans. In it, Denver confessed to using marijuana, LSD, and cocaine. He also admitted to cheating on both of his wives, including during his first marriage to Annie. He spoke of moments where his anger led to violence, including the infamous chainsaw incident. The revelations shattered his clean-cut image. Fans, who had once seen him as the wholesome voice of the 1970s, now saw a complicated man struggling with his own demons. By the mid-1980s, Denver's music career had already begun to decline. Sound of the industry had changed, synthesizers, drum machines, and slick production had taken over. Acoustic nature-inspired songs no longer fit the mainstream. In 1986, RCA's label for over 2 decades was sold to General Electric. Despite Denver's long track record and profitability, they dropped him to focus on younger, trendier artists. Denver was devastated. He had just completed what he thought would be his next album, One World, and fully expected to renew his contract. Instead, he found himself without a label. With no major companies willing to take him on, Denver released future albums independently under his own label. Windstar was a harsh lesson. In the music business, even legends can be left behind. Throughout his life, flying remained one of Denver's greatest passions. He logged over 20,000 flight hours and was licensed to fly single-engine planes, multi-engine aircraft, gliders, and even hot air balloons. But by the 1990s, his personal issues caught up with him. He was arrested twice for driving under the influence. The Federal Aviation Administration revoked his medical certificate, which meant he could no longer legally fly. To regain it, Denver would have had to complete treatment and prove sobriety, but he never followed through. Flying, once his greatest joy, was now out of reach. What made things worse was how he responded to the FAA's actions. When the FAA sent certified letters demanding that John Denver surrender his medical certificate, he refused to cooperate. Some letters were ignored. Others were returned unopened. Legally, this created a troubling loophole because Denver never officially received them. the FAA couldn't complete the revocation process. On paper, he still had a pilot's license, but not because he was fit to fly. The system relied on his compliance, and he was actively avoiding it. That loophole finally closed in March 1997 when Denver signed for one of the FAA's certified letters. With that signature, the agency was able to officially ground him. That moment forward, every time he took to the skies, it was illegal. To get back in the air legally, Denver would have needed to demonstrate sobriety and comply with the regulations he'd ignored for years, but he never took those steps. Still, he kept flying. On October 12, 1997, John Denver climbed into a small experimental aircraft near Monterey, California. He had purchased the plane only the day before and had just 30 minutes of instruction in it before taking off solo. The aircraft, a Rutan Long-EZ, had been heavily modified and was notoriously difficult to operate. One of its most dangerous quirks was the fuel selector valve, which had been moved to an awkward position behind the pilot's left shoulder to switch fuel tanks mid-flight. Denver had to twist around uncomfortably, sometimes using pliers just to reach the stiff valve. Worse, the fuel gauges were located behind him, requiring a mirror to read, and even then, the readings were hard to interpret. That day, while practicing takeoffs and landings near the Monterey Peninsula Airport, Denver used up the fuel in the left tank. Witnesses later said they heard the engine sputter, then fall silent. Denver tried to switch to the right tank, but as he twisted in his seat to reach the valve, he accidentally pressed the right rudder pedal, causing the plane's nose to pitch sharply downward. Seconds later, the aircraft slammed into the Pacific Ocean. John Denver was killed instantly. The National Transportation Safety Board (NTSB) later found that Denver had started the flight with only about 9 gallons of fuel, far too little for safe operation. They concluded that his unfamiliarity with the aircraft, combined with its unsafe modifications, were key factors in the crash. It was clear if he had refueled, trained more extensively, or flown a safer aircraft, the accident might have been avoided. His final flight became a tragic example of how ignored warnings, small miscalculations, and risky behavior can end in disaster. Denver's death wasn't just tragic, it was sobering. Millions mourned the loss of a beloved artist. But the accident also brought attention to a more troubling truth. He had a pattern of taking dangerous risks. He was known to perform glider stunts with the engine off, and he continued flying even after being warned and grounded by aviation authorities, though no drugs or alcohol were found in his system after the crash. His earlier arrests for driving under the influence and a 1990s DUI-related crash had already taken a toll on his public image. Yet, despite his personal failings, John Denver's legacy endures. His music, full of love for nature, peace, and human connection, continues to resonate with generations. Songs like Take Me Home, Country Roads, Annie's Song, K, and Rocky Mountain High remain cultural touchstones, capturing the spirit of simpler times and the beauty of the American landscape. Denver was also a pioneer in environmental activism, advocating for the planet long before it became a mainstream cause. In the end, the world chooses to remember not just his mistakes, but the man who sang from the heart, stood for peace, and reminded us of the healing power of music in the natural world today. A 15-foot bronze statue of John Denver stands at Red Rocks Amphitheater in Colorado, arms outstretched, guitar in hand, surrounded by the mountains he loved. It's a lasting tribute to a man whose journey down country roads, while often troubled, left a legacy of beauty, truth, and unforgettable song.